Always there were two different weights and measures in my house. I found out when I was only 7, after getting a second-hand puzzle while my sister Megan was getting a shiny new bicycle. My parents smiled and told me I ought to be grateful for what I had. That was the first of many lessons about my place in that family. I grew up watching my achievements get brushed off, while Megan's wins were celebrated like they were extraordinary. When I got a perfect score on the math test, my dad hardly even looked up from the newspaper. That was the least you could do, Jordan. But when Megan passed her gym class, we had a special dinner to celebrate. The same pattern repeated throughout my teenage years. At 15, I got my mom's old cell phone when she bought a new one. In the same month, Megan got the latest iPhone, because she needs to stay in touch with her friends. When I turned 16, I spent months saving my allowance to buy a used car that spent more time in the repair shop than on the road. Megan, on the other hand, she got a brand new Volkswagen for her 16th birthday. Subscribe to the channel and drop a like to access more stories like this. It's different, Jordan, my mom used to say. Your sister is more sensitive, she needs more support. Meanwhile, I spent extra hours working at the supermarket after school to earn my own money. Megan tried 3 different jobs in high school, quitting each in less than 2 weeks because the environment wasn't welcoming, or her manager didn't appreciate her talent. When I got accepted into the state college, my parents congratulated me with a card. No party, no celebration. You've always been independent, son. We knew you'd make it, my dad said, with that smile that never really reached his eyes. 2 years later, when Megan got into a less prestigious private university, my parents threw a party for 50 people and paid her tuition in full. I had to work through college to cover my expenses. 7 years have passed since I graduated. I've built a solid career as a financial analyst. I have my own apartment, and I've finally found stability. Megan, at 25, she still lives with my parents, switched majors 3 times, and works occasionally as a substitute teacher while figuring out her true calling. My mom still does her laundry, and my dad still pays her bills. I accepted that dynamic as part of my reality. Until last month, my dad called me on a Tuesday. Jordan, we're going to have to cancel our annual trip to the beach house. We're facing some money troubles. Your mom had to cut her work hours and we've got a few medical bills to pay. I got worried. The trip to the beach house was the one family tradition I really cherished. Can I help with anything, Dad? No, son. These are tough times for everyone. We need to tighten our belts. I offered to help cover part of the trip costs, but he refused, saying it wouldn't be fair to me. Next year will be better, he promised. 3 weeks later, I was scrolling through Instagram when I suddenly stopped. There was a photo of my mom, my dad, and Megan, all smiling with champagne glasses in hand, sitting in first-class seats. The caption read, "Starting our dream vacation. Family is everything." My heart began to pound. At first, I thought it was an old photo. I clicked on Megan's public profile and saw more posts from the last 48 hours. All 3 at a luxury resort in Greece, dining in fancy restaurants, enjoying exclusive yacht trips. A week later, when they got back, I visited my parents as if nothing had happened. I didn't mention the trip. They didn't either. When I asked how they'd spent the past few weeks, my mom vaguely said they'd been resting at home and doing some gardening work. During dinner, my mom casually mentioned how people flaunt their luxury trips on social media. "Who can afford that kind of stuff nowadays?" she said while serving more salad. "You should work more hours, Jordan. Maybe one day you'll be able to take a trip like that." Something inside of me broke at that moment. I smiled politely, but my mind was already elsewhere. That night, sitting in my apartment, I began making some calls. My uncle Nathan had always been different from the other adults in the family. While everyone else seemed to accept, without question, the preferential treatment Megan received, he was the only one who occasionally raised an eyebrow when my parents made up excuses to skip my soccer games, but rearranged their schedules for her dance recitals. "Hey, Uncle, do you have a minute to talk?" I asked when he answered the phone. "Jordan, of course I do. What's up? You sound tense." I hesitated for a moment before telling him everything. About the trip being canceled due to financial difficulties. About the photos I discovered by accident. About my mom's cruel comment at dinner. I always knew there was favoritism, but this is different. It's like I'm not even part of the family. My voice faltered slightly. There was a long silence on the other end. "Jordan, there's something you need to know," he finally said. "Your parents borrowed money from me last month. They said they were having trouble paying for their health plan." "How much?" $5,000. I closed my eyes, feeling a wave of nausea. And that wasn't the first time, was it? No. In the past 2 years, I've lent nearly $15,000 in total. Always for emergencies, for essential things. But now that you're telling me this, they've been lying to everyone, haven't they? I think we need to find out. You've always had a good head for money, Jordan. The family trusts you. In the following weeks, I did something I never imagined I'd do. I started to systematically investigate my parents' finances. It wasn't hard. They never suspected I'd get suspicious, so they were careless. First, I discreetly reached out to other family members, my grandma Betty, 2 uncles, an aunt. Every conversation revealed the same story. My parents had borrowed significant amounts from all of them over the past few years, always with touching stories about financial struggles. Altogether, they owed over $50,000 to the family. Grandma Betty, did you know they just got back from a first-class trip to Greece? I asked gently, addressing my grandma who lived on her modest retirement. The silence on the other end was deafening. But Richard said he needed the money to fix the roof before winter. Every revelation hit like a small earthquake, shaking the foundations of my family. I meticulously gathered evidence, screenshots of social media posts, bank statements my mom had accidentally left in a shared folder on the family computer, emails about hotel reservations I managed to access from the account she never bothered to secure properly. Uncle Nathan soon became my main ally. We need to confront them, Jordan. Not just about the money, but about years of manipulation. This can't go on. How? I asked. They always twist things around. I'm always painted as the villain in their stories. This time will be different, he promised. Because it won't just be you. Nathan set up a family lunch at his house on a Sunday. Just a casual get-together, he told everyone. My parents accepted the invitation without suspecting a thing, even bringing Megan along, of course. The lunch went on normally for about an hour. My mom shared stories about the hard times they were experiencing. My dad talked about cutting unnecessary expenses. Meanwhile, Megan was quietly showing a cousin photos of her new iPhone, a recent gift from my parents. Then Grandma Betty, usually so quiet and agreeable, cleared her throat and said, "Richard, Elizabeth, could you tell us about your trip to Greece?" Silence fell over the room. I saw my mom visibly pale. What trip? My dad tried to change the subject, but his voice betrayed his nervousness. Uncle Nathan slid his tablet across the table. On the screen was a collage of pictures. Them at a luxury resort, in first-class seats, on a private yacht. While you told your own mother you couldn't help her with her medicine, Nathan said calmly. And you owed me $5,000 that I lent to pay for an operation that never happened, added Aunt Clara. One by one, the relatives started speaking. Each had a similar story. Money lent for emergencies that never were. Repayment promises that never came through. And now evidence of a luxury trip that completely contradicted every story of financial hardship. I stayed quiet, watching it all unfold. My dad tried to downplay the situation at first, but as more relatives voiced their anger, he became defensive. My mom started crying, the same tactic she always used when confronted. "How could you lie to all of us?" Grandma Betty asked, her voice trembling. "I even borrowed money from my friend Doris to help you. I've been living on minimum for months just to lend you what you needed." "Things aren't that simple," my dad began. "We have responsibilities, commitments." "To whom?" Uncle Nathan interrupted. "To the 5-star resort in Greece?" That's when my mom, realizing her tears weren't working, switched tactics. Her eyes fixed on me. "It was you, wasn't it? You set all this up." Everyone turned to look at me, and I felt the weight of their stares. For a moment, I nearly fell into the trap of defending myself or trying to justify. But then I realized that was exactly what she wanted, to shift the focus and make me the villain once again. "This isn't about me, Mom," I said calmly. "It's about you lying to the whole family for years. You're just jealous because we didn't invite you on the trip," she snapped, her voice rising. "It's always been like that. We never can please you. It's never enough." "Elizabeth," Grandma Betty's voice cut through the air, firm and steady. "I'm disappointed. That's not how I raised you." Megan, who had been watching in shock, finally spoke. "Wait, you said everyone knew about the trip, but that Jordan chose not to go because he was too busy with work." A heavy silence fell over the room. My sister looked at me, confused. "They told me the trip was canceled because of money problems," I explained to her. "I found out by accident when I saw your photos on Instagram." "But why lie about it then?" Megan said, genuinely puzzled. My dad abruptly stood up. "Enough of this nonsense. Elizabeth, Megan, let's go. Not until you tell us when you plan on paying what you owe." Uncle Nathan said firmly. "This is a private matter between us and each one of you," my dad replied curtly. "We don't need a family intervention." "Actually, we do," Aunt Clara shot back, "because it's not a private matter anymore when you systematically lie to everyone." That's when Grandma Betty, trembling, opened her purse and pulled out a stack of papers. "I have all the IOUs you signed for me in the last 3 years. They add up to $17,000 taken from my retirement. If you can't be honest about your situation, at least be honest about your debts." The meeting turned into something I never thought I'd see. My family uniting not to protect my parents, but to hold them accountable. Grandma Betty, Uncle Nathan, and the others began comparing their notes, literally adding up what my parents owed each of them. Through it all, I stayed relatively quiet. It wasn't just about me or the unfair treatment I had received all my life anymore. It was about a pattern of manipulation affecting the whole family. When my parents finally left, taking a visibly confused Megan with them, the rest of the family stayed together. "What do we do now?" Aunt Clara asked. Uncle Nathan looked at me. "Jordan works in finance. I think he can help us figure out a plan." In the following weeks, I worked with Nathan to create a plan. Using my financial skills, I compiled all the documentation, signed promissory notes, bank transfer receipts, text messages, and emails where my parents asked for money based on false stories. We organized everything into both digital and physical folders. With help from a lawyer friend, we drafted a formal letter demanding a repayment plan for the debts. "Is this really necessary?" Megan asked one day when she met me for coffee. She had reached out separately, confused and hurt by it all. "Megan, it's not just about the money. It's about years of manipulation and lies." "But they're our parents," she argued, her eyes brimming with tears. For the first time, I realized that Megan wasn't a willing accomplice in our parents' scheme. In many ways, she was as much a victim as I was, just in a different way. While I was neglected, she was turned into an extension of their fantasies, a pretty doll meant to be displayed, unable to grow into her own independence. "I'm sorry you're caught in the middle," I said sincerely. "But this situation isn't healthy for anyone. Not for our parents, not for us, and not for the rest of the family." A week later, Uncle Nathan and I handed the formal letter to our parents along with a folder of all our evidence. "What is this?" my dad asked, his face reddening as he flipped through the documents. "An opportunity to do the right thing," Nathan replied. "You have 2 weeks to present a repayment plan. If not, the family has collectively decided to take legal action." "You wouldn't be able to," my mom whispered, looking directly at me. "We're not bluffing," I replied calmly. "The whole family is behind us." I saw genuine fear on my parents' faces. Real fear. Not the fake kind my mom used to manipulate situations. They finally understood that this time, the consequences would be real. 3 days later, I received a message from my mom asking to meet at the cafe near my work. Just the two of us. The cafe was nearly empty when I got there. My mom was already seated at a corner table, nervously fidgeting with her cup. She looked like she had aged years in just a few days. When she saw me, she tried to smile, but the gesture didn't reach her eyes. "Jordan, dear, thanks for coming." I sat down across from her without a smile. "What do you want, Mom?" She reached out her hand as if to touch mine, then discreetly pulled it back. Her face showed a flash of hurt that quickly turned into a calculated sadness. "We need to talk about this terrible situation. All this mess." She sighed deeply. "Your dad and I are devastated by what's happening." "All your mess of lying to everyone for years?" I asked calmly. "Jordan, you're twisting the facts." She lowered her voice, glancing around as if she feared someone might be listening. "We never lied. We just managed information differently with different people." I had to chuckle bitterly. "Is that what you call it? Managing information? You have no idea of the pressure we were under, the expectations. We always had to keep up appearances, show that we were fine, that we were successful." She took a sip of coffee. "Sometimes that means making adjustments to the truth. And borrowing money from your own mother, who lives on her retirement, to fund luxury trips? That's just another adjustment to the truth, isn't it?" Her lips tightened momentarily before relaxing into a rehearsed look of vulnerability. "Let's talk about the real reason behind all this, Jordan. I know you've always felt overlooked." There it was. Her attempt to turn everything into my problem, a pattern so familiar that it almost made me smile. "This isn't about my feelings, Mom," I said. "It's about $50,000 in debt that you owe the family, money obtained through lies." "Dear, you've always been so sensitive. Ever since you were a child," I I remember when you cried because we gave that bike to Megan. Mom, I interrupted firmly. I'm not here to talk about my childhood. I'm here because you asked to discuss the lawyer's letter. She switched tactics instantly, her expression hardening. That letter was a low blow, Jordan. Hiring a lawyer against your own family? What will people think? Honestly, I don't care what people think anymore. I care about the truth. The truth, she repeated, almost spitting the word. The truth is that you're trying to humiliate us. You're trying to destroy us because of some childish resentment you never got over. I took a deep breath, feeling a calm determination wash over me. For years, words like that would have devastated me, made me doubt my own perspective on reality. But now, with solid evidence and the whole family finally seeing what I've always seen, her words no longer held any power over me. You have two options, I said in a neutral tone. Either present a viable repayment plan in 1 week, or face collective legal action from the family. And before you ask, yes, Grandma Betty is in on this too. She was the one who suggested hiring the lawyer. My mom paled. Your grandma would never do that to us. Apparently lying to her about medical needs while spending her money on 5-star resorts crossed a line. She fell silent for a long moment, her fingers drumming nervously on the table. Then her expression softened for a second, and her voice turned almost into a whisper. Jordan, we're your family, your only family. Think about what this will do to all of us. Think about Megan. I have thought about Megan. I talked to her yesterday. That caught her off guard. What? What did you say to her? The truth. That you lied to her just as much as you lied to me, only in different ways. She looked genuinely alarmed now. You had no right. She deserves to know that the dynamic we created isn't normal or healthy. That the favoritism you always showed her ended up hurting her too, leaving her dependent and insecure. That's ridiculous. She raised her voice, making the barista look in our direction. Immediately, she composed herself and returned to her controlled tone. We always treated you both equally. I couldn't help a short, humorless laugh. Mom, we both know that's not true. And now, everyone in the family knows it too. She leaned forward, a new urgency in her tone. Jordan, let's handle this as a family. No lawyers, no formal letters. We can sell some things, arrange a repayment plan among ourselves. We don't need to expose our problems to outsiders. We've tried handling things as a family for years. It never worked because you were never honest. And is this public humiliation really your idea of honesty? I considered her question. No, it's my idea of consequences. Something you always taught me but never applied to yourselves. She went silent, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of understanding in her eyes, as if she finally grasped the gravity of the situation. But it quickly faded, replaced by the familiar, calculated expression. Your dad is going to be devastated when he finds out you're not willing to give us a chance, she said, reaching for her purse. After everything we've done for you all your life. That was her final card. The guilt trip. How many times had that phrase, after everything we've done for you, made me back down, give in, and doubt myself. This time, I watched her tactic with an almost clinical detachment. 1 week, Mom. A viable repayment plan in 1 week. She stood up, straightening her coat with forced dignity. You've changed, Jordan. I don't recognize my son anymore. Actually, I think I'm finally becoming who I was always meant to be. Someone who won't accept being manipulated. She gave me one last pained look before leaving. I sat there for almost an hour after she left, processing everything. For the first time, I didn't feel guilty or confused after an encounter with my mom. I felt clear, centered, and sure of my position. The following week, to my real surprise, my parents sent a detailed repayment plan to all the family members involved. It listed the amounts owed to each person, with a monthly payment schedule spanning the next 2 years. Along with it, they sent a formal apology letter, admitting that they had mismanaged their finances and communications. It wasn't a full admission of everything, but it was a start. Uncle Nathan called as soon as he received the document. You did it, Jordan. They're really going to take responsibility. I guess the legal threat worked, I replied, still processing the fact that we actually achieved something. It wasn't just that, Nathan said. It was you finally standing up for yourself. We all followed your lead. In the following weeks, my parents started making the payments as promised. My communication with them turned into formal emails and the occasional message about practical matters. They tried a few times to re-establish our old dynamic, dinner invitations peppered with subtle comments about my rebellious phase, attempts to make me feel guilty for dividing the family, but I held my boundaries firm. Surprisingly, Megan and I began to build a more honest relationship. I discovered that beneath the layers of privilege and favoritism, she was a young woman who was insecure and confused, never having developed an identity separate from our parents' expectations. "How did you do it?" she asked one day, while having coffee at the same place where I confronted our mom. "How did you manage to break free when I still feel trapped?" "It wasn't easy," I admitted. "And it didn't happen overnight. It started when I stopped seeking their approval and began trusting my own judgment. I helped Megan find her own apartment and a therapist. It was the first time I really acted as an older brother. To my surprise, she accepted my help with gratitude and admitted that she had always secretly admired my independence. 6 months passed since the family confrontation. The payments kept coming on time to the relatives' accounts. My parents sold some assets to meet their obligations, including the beach house that we rarely used as a complete family. The relationship between them and the rest of us remained tense, but with each payment made, a bit of trust was slowly rebuilt. This morning, while packing up some old boxes in my apartment, I found myself reflecting on the whole situation. I discovered family photos, birthday cards with generic messages, and mementos of a childhood lived in the shadow of favoritism. Was I right to expose my parents like that? To force them to face public consequences for their behavior? At times I still wonder. Maybe there was a kinder, more private way to handle it all. Maybe I was too harsh, too inflexible. But then I remember Grandma Betty using part of her retirement to help my parents while they traveled first class. I recall Aunt Clara's tears when she found out that the money borrowed for medical treatment was used to buy a high-end entertainment system. I remember Megan, unwittingly trapped in a web of dependency and privilege that stopped her from growing into her own person. And I remember myself, the kid who spent years believing there was something fundamentally wrong with me, that I'd never be good enough, that I deserved less than my sister. The truth is, healthy families don't thrive on secrets and manipulation. They don't build relationships on lies. They don't sacrifice one family member to benefit another. Sometimes, the most compassionate thing we can do is break a toxic cycle, even if it means facing those who are supposed to protect us, even if it means shaking the very foundations of our family. I don't know what our family's future will be like. I don't know if my parents will ever fully recognize the damage they caused or if they'll keep seeing themselves as victims of an ungrateful son. I don't know if we'll ever have the kind of relationship I always dreamed of as a child. But I do know that, for the first time in my life, I'm dealing with them honestly. Not through the distorted lens they created, but by seeing them as they really are. Flawed people who made questionable choices. People who, like all of us, must face the consequences of their actions. And maybe, just maybe, this new beginning based on truth, even though it's painful, will give us a chance to build something more genuine than we ever had before. Not some fantasy of a perfect family, but a messy, imperfect reality where everyone is seen, heard, and treated with the dignity they deserve. While putting the old photos back in the box, I realized I wasn't looking for approval or validation in those images anymore. I wasn't trying to figure out why I wasn't loved the way I needed to be. Subscribe to the channel and drop a like to access more stories like this. Instead, I'm looking forward to the family I'm building now, not just with Megan and the relatives who supported me, but with the friends I chose, with connections based on mutual respect and honesty. And in this new chapter, I'm no longer the neglected son or the forgotten brother. I'm just Jordan, whole, imperfect, and finally free.